The Doctor Who title sequence is so iconic, from the terrifying music to the surreal visual effects. Today we're going to be ranking every single Doctor Who title sequence. So let's not waste any time and get straight into it. First up, we have the original 1963 title sequence, and I've put it into the best category. This is easily one of my favourite title sequences because it is just so iconic. It is the original. I think it's one of the best versions of the title theme music as well. I think there's something really haunting about it. It kind of like unnerves you a little bit. I think it's because it's so analog as well. You know, there's very few title sequences where I'm like, ooh, that really like is a little bit spooky. I think like the X-Files, the Twilight Zone, you know, both of those themes are very iconic, and I think Doctor Who has that sense of spookiness to it as well. I just really admire the ingenuity behind this title sequence as well, and the experimental nature of it, and how analog it is. You know, just pointing a camera at its own monitor and stuff like that, and it's creating this weird, bizarre visual effects. It's just beautiful. And you know, nowadays we have like massive CGI, incredible title sequences, and this was just something so simple, yet so effective, and I really admire that. I think it's funny at this time as well because, you know, Doctor Who didn't really have a logo like it does now. It was just like a really simple font, but I still think it looks quite good. But yeah, absolutely adore this title sequence. You know, it's great to see it whenever it comes back. You know, like Day of the Doctor, they brought it back and they made it like 16:9 and stuff like that. It's just such a great title sequence, and it's always great to hear it and see it. Next up, we have the 1967 title sequence, and I put it into the great category. I also really love this title sequence as well, you know, for Patrick Troughton's era. You know, it took a while for them to switch over the title sequence. You know, this wasn't shown until, I think, the visuals weren't until the Macra Terror, but the theme song change wasn't until the Faceless ones, I think. Don't quote me on that. I think so though, that sounds about right. Although the effect is similar to the original one, I just think the original one just looks prettier. It feels more like clouds, whereas this one feels a lot more electronic. I still think it looks amazing and I still love it. And incorporating like Patrick Troughton's face just adds something really like spooky and cool to the title sequence too. And you know, this rendition of the theme stays pretty much unchanged until the 1980s. You know, this version of the theme really sticks around with some minor alterations, which I think just shows how iconic and brilliant this theme really is, and how Delia Derbyshire is like an incredible artist for creating this. And once again, we've got a very basic logo design as well. There's no logo, it's just a font. And it's a pretty basic one, but it still just looks good. I think Doctor Who, like trying to create a logo for it is very difficult because, you know, Doctor is such a long word and Who is so short. So the Who has to be massive and the Doctor has to be short. And it's just kind of like an awkward shape to make. Next up, we have the title sequence from 1970 for Jon Pertwee, and I put it into the great category. I think this is a really great colour version interpretation of the original title sequence. I think it does the job really well. And the choices of colour just look so nice. And it doesn't feel like distracting, you know, it changes a lot. You know, it's heaps of different colours, but it somehow just feels right. I think this is probably the first time we really see a Doctor Who logo. Like, of course it is a font, but it feels more designed than previous Doctor Who logos. I think the photo they chose of Jon Pertwee for the face is not the best. I think the way they lit Pertwee looks a bit goofy, but I still think it works. It's a little bit scary. I think it took them a while to figure out how to incorporate the face into the title sequence without it looking scary. I think it's like a real 50-50. I think half the time it works, half the time it's just terrifying. I think one of the best things though is when the logo appears and it's that beautiful like smeared effect. It just looks so glowy and analog and just beautiful. It's just such a great title sequence. Next up is the 1973 title sequence, and I put it into the best category. I think this title sequence is so beautiful. And it's one of those rare moments where, you know, it was only around for one season and then there's kind of a remix for Tom Baker later on. But the one thing I really love about this title sequence is how they have the close-up of Jon Pertwee's face and then it pulls out to a full body shot. And then the time vortex is like given the outline of Jon Pertwee, and it's just beautiful. It's just so well done. It just looks so slick. And I think it's just such an impressive effect for the time. It just really, really impresses me. And it's sad it's only used for this one season. And this is the debut of the iconic Doctor Who 1970s logo, you know, with the beautiful diamond, and it just looks so nice. And really, it's the first time we get a proper logo. You know, I think Jon Pertwee's first logo does count as like a proper logo, but this one just feels really designed, because it is really designed. And the swirling stars at the beginning just look so nice. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful sequence. I just really love this one. But it's one of those moments where you think, does this really suit Jon Pertwee's Doctor as much as it suits Tom Baker's? You know, and we'll encounter this question later on as well, with Tom Baker using Peter Davison's title sequence really as well. You know, it feels like the original title sequence is so linked to Jon Pertwee that to switch it over in the final season sometimes feels a bit odd. This is the first, but it won't be the last of changing, you know, the brand design of a Doctor in their final season. I always think it's odd. It's like, why are you finishing it off in such a different design? Like, why don't you just finish off the era with what made it iconic? But, you know, whatever, it's fine. Next up is a 1974 title sequence for Tom Baker, and I put it into the best category. This really is just one of the most iconic title sequences in Doctor Who. When people think classic Doctor Who, they really think of this title sequence. It's the first and this one. For me, personally, that's what I think of. I think the blues are so beautiful. I love, you know, the original TARDIS PNG. You know, it's the first time we see like the TARDIS in the title sequence, and it just looks so nice. And it really, you know, emphasizes that the TARDIS is the one consistent thing throughout all of Doctor Who. So of course it deserves a place in the title sequence. That just makes sense. And just the way the title sequence is just so fluid, and, you know, and especially at this point, you know, with Jon Pertwee's final title sequence in this one, we've moved away from doing the howl-around analog visual effect electronic thing, and we're moving into something different. And I think that is really bold and brave, and it just looks really good. It feels so 70s, but it feels almost timeless as well. And even just like the little details of having like the gradient color on Tom Baker's face, and also the logo, so it just feels a bit more alive, like it's popping a bit more. It's just really inspired. They just did a really great job. It's one of those examples where they had a go with Jon Pertwee and they did this title sequence, and then they got an opportunity to refine it. And I think they really, really nailed it here. And it's just beautiful. Next up is the 1980s Tom Baker title sequence, and I put it into the okay category. Although I like this title sequence, it just feels wrong with Tom Baker. You know, it's what I was saying earlier, where, you know, this title sequence is just not suited for his Doctor. It feels like John Nathan Turner, the producer at the time, is trying to say, we want a bold new vision for Doctor Who, you know, we want it to feel very 1980s. But Tom Baker does not suit the 1980s. He is a 1970s Doctor. And to put him in the 80s just feels off. That's why I'm not a huge fan of that season, because it feels like a guy who's stuck around for maybe a year too long. The show has outgrown him, and, you know, the producer wants to do different stories that don't suit him. Whereas, you know, something like season 17, which is probably a bit too comical, it suits Tom Baker. You can't imagine Peter Davison doing season 17. That's insane. It does not work at all. In the same way, like seeing Tom Baker do season 18 just feels wrong to me. It's just not designed for him. It's not the type of storytelling you tell with that actor. And I feel like they weren't utilizing his strengths. And I think he could tell that. You know, he was checked out. He was ready to go. Although I like this title sequence, I'm going to talk about it more with Peter Davison because there's barely any changes apart from a face. Next up is the 1982 title sequence for Peter Davison, and I put it into the good category. From this point onwards in the classic series, the title sequence now feels like more of a reflection of the time period it was made. You know, this feels so 1980s. But I adore the starfield, I adore the flares. It feels like it's adding a bit of analog into something a lot more electronic. Even though I think this was made like analog style, it wasn't done by computers. You know, the first CG title sequence is Sylvester McCoy's, but this one feels a lot more electronic. Does that make sense? It's not so much, I don't think that makes any sense, but just go with me. I think it's the starfield. It just feels more CG and generated, even though it's not. I absolutely adore having the star outline around Peter Davison's face. I think it's such a great idea. It's harking back to, that Pertwee title sequence where his whole body is outlined. It feels like a callback to that. And it's just so beautiful. And then when the stars go out and it like turns into like a little star field, it's just beautiful. When the logo appears and it like explodes with lights, it just feels so dynamic and exciting. It is a really beautiful title sequence, but it's just not up. I just don't see it as iconic as those earlier title sequences. So I put it into the good category, but I still think it's really good. It's good. It's just not my favorite. I think one thing I don't really like about this title sequence is the choice of font for the credits, as in like the episode title and the writer. Having that outline just doesn't look very nice. And I really don't like the Doctor Who logo. Having the neon outline, it's just so 80s and it's dated so much. It's just not it for me. Next up is the 1984 title sequence for Colin Baker, and I put it into the good category. I absolutely love the fact that they've added more color. I think it is a lot more brighter and a lot more nicer having that purple, because the original Davison one is really beautiful, but it feels a bit flat just having the blue and the neon, whereas I think adding that bit of blue and that bit of red, adding that color just makes it feel so much more vibrant, and it suits Colin Baker's Doctor so much more. Having Colin Baker's like cut out against the blue would just look absolutely silly. They needed to add more color. I remember reading something about one of the costume designers, I don't remember who, and saying that Perry's costumes had to be so much more colorful so the Doctor wouldn't stand out so much. That's why she had to dress in those bright pinks and bright yellows. So when they stood next to each other, they complemented each other and took away the distractiveness from Colin Baker's costume. And I think, the title sequence here is trying to do the same thing. It's trying to distract and take away some of the vibrancy of his costume. When Colin Baker's face appears in the outline and having that just added some color, and when it explodes, you have the beautiful bright rainbow. It just looks so great. Although I like this theme music, it changes for Colin Baker's second season, Trial of a Time Lord. It has a slightly different theme. I do like it, but I don't love it as much as the earlier themes. The first two are just so brilliant that it's kind of hard to beat them, but I still like it. I think it's good. I just don't think it's the best. And especially the second title sequence is just so disco. It's so 80s. And I just don't think it dates as well as some of the earlier title sequences. Because, the original title sequence, yeah, you could tell it was made in the 1960s and not really something you would broadcast on national television today. I think because of the analog nature, it still feels real. Does that make any sense? I don't know. Am I making any sense today? Do I ever make sense? Do you guys just watch my videos and be like, what the hell is Josh on about now? Because I sometimes feel like that. Next up is a 1987 title sequence for Sylvester McCoy, and I put it into the okay category. I think the thing about this title sequence is that I love what it's trying to do. I love the idea behind it. I like the different elements. You see that the little galaxy thing and the little asteroids and the TARDIS appearing around the little bubble force field. I think it's a visually interesting title sequence, but I think the execution of it has just dated so poorly. This is the first CGI, completely CGI title sequence, apart from Sylvester McCoy's photo. But it's the first proper CG title sequence. It's impressive for the time. Is it? Maybe it's impressive for television at the time, but I don't really think it's impressive considering, CGI stuff that they're doing in other American shows. You look at the visual effects in Star Trek: The Next Generation around the same time, and it's just so much better. Or, in movies, it's just night and day. This looks bargain basement in comparison. But, so I don't know. Was it impressive at the time? I wasn't there. I was born in 1994. Don't calculate my age. I am still 30. I am not 31, even though I may have turned 31. I'm still 30. And this title sequence just doesn't age as well. It just doesn't. To me, personally. Although I love it because I'm a Doctor Who fan and I love all of my children equally, I still, I don't think it's one of the best title sequences. I think the theme music is a bit grating at points. Even though I like it, I just don't think it's very good. I think the logo is one of Doctor Who's worst. I think it is so insane. And I really don't know what the design idea behind it even is. It's just not for me, babes. I love having Sylvester McCoy's face in the title sequence and that he painted himself silver in real life, even though they could have just edited the photo to be silver. I think it's such a funny miscommunication, and it makes for some really funny behind the scenes photos. And although I love having the bubble around the TARDIS, what is it even doing? When has the TARDIS ever had a bubble around it? I don't really understand why it has that, but it's fine. Next up is a 1996 title sequence from the TV movie, and I put it into the best category. This title sequence is beautiful. I love the colors. I love how good the TARDIS looks. The way it's lit in the title sequence is just beautiful. I love that they brought back the Pertwee logo and they just made it 3D and it felt a lot more dynamic, but it's still harkening back to the original one as well. I think it's one of the best time tunnels Doctor Who has ever had. It just looks so clean and so expensive. And you can tell how much the new series title sequences have been inspired by this one. I love having the asteroids, a bit of a callback to Sylvester McCoy's title sequence as well. There's lots of little things and their little hints and stuff like that. I think their biggest inspiration was probably the Tom Baker title sequence. And you can tell. And it just feels like a real modern interpretation. It just feels so nice. And I love, we're starting out in space and then we make it all the way to Earth. It feels like we're on a real journey. And I love that part of this title sequence. I think it's hard to judge this title sequences compared to the other ones because it was for a movie. And, it was designed specifically for this TV movie. And I wonder how similar this would have been if it made it 2 series. I love the fonts for all the credits. It's just so nice. I love all of it. I have no negative things to say about this title sequence. It's just brilliant. And that's the end of all the classic series title sequences. Let's move on to the new series. Next up is the 2005 title sequence, and I put it into the great category. I love this title sequence. There's a few reasons why it's not my absolute favorite, but what I do love about this one, it's similar to the Paul McGann title sequence in the fact that it feels like you're going on a journey. We start in this red vortex that looks beautiful and the TARDIS is moving so fast and it feels so dynamic and the music is so really driving. It's really exciting. It's probably one of the most exciting title sequences we've had ever in Doctor Who up until this point. A lot of the other ones felt more mysterious and a little bit creepy or, they were beautiful. But this one felt like exciting adventure. This was an adventure show. And I think it works for this era of Doctor Who. I personally prefer a more spooky and mysterious interpretation of the title theme, but I love this big orchestra version of the theme in the same way that the TV movie has that beautiful orchestra theme as well. There is something expensive about it. I think the TARDIS looks great in the title sequence. It's very accurate to the real prop. I love how we're going through the red vortex and then we move in between vortexes. And the TARDIS is that little 3D rotation and then it flies straight through into the blue. And it just looks so nice. Leaving the vortex is something that is just so different and it's something that would have never occurred to me. But it just works here so well. I think one thing I don't like about this title sequence is I really don't like the logo. I think that silver oval shape thing is just really ugly. I just really don't like it. I think it's the most 2005 part of this title sequence. I don't think it's aged as well, but it's fine. I think all, the 3D fonts for the cast look really good as well and the movement of it, it's still really dynamic. It's moving forward. I think this is a really, really great title sequence for sure. And it's the first one I ever saw. So I have a soft spot for it, but it's not my absolute favorite. Next up is the 2009 slight rework of this title sequence, and I put it into the great category. I also really like this new version of it. It's only slight changes, having that new theme That a lot of people prefer the original one, but I do have a soft spot for this one. And I think it's because I love Series 4 so much. It's my favourite David Tennant season. It's my favourite season of Russell T Davies 1 because I love the Doctor and Donna. I love their relationship. So, you know, this theme is what I think of when I think of David Tennant's era. But I kind of rank these two very similar. I find them in the same place. I do like the changed logo. I like having the orange oval more over the silver. I think this one looks a bit more nicer. It feels like a nice polish on the original, but there's not that many changes in order to warrant me being like, wow. Do you know what I mean? Next up is the 2010 title sequence, and I put it into the best category. I know this one's going to be divisive because a lot of people don't like this title sequence, but I've always loved this title sequence. I think it just looks so expensive. You know, having the storm clouds in the title sequence and the lightning visual effects is really cool. And I like that they've incorporated sound effects into the title sequence, but I think they should have made them a little bit quieter. They're a bit too loud that it distracts from the music itself, which I think is a bit of a mistake. I love the theme of this one. I love how it starts and it just feels really... 2010, it felt really new for the time. It felt so like it's such a great reinvention. And it still, you know, follows the similar path of the 2005, 2009 title sequence. You know, you're going through one vortex and then you're into a fiery vortex. And it's just a nice journey. I like having those two separate places to go. I think having the silver metallic titles, you know, for the cast list looks really great. I don't think the logo is that good. In fact, I don't really like it at all. I've never been a massive fan of that Doctor Who logo. It just feels so clunky. But it's fine and it works. But I like how, you know, the TARDIS like transforms and stuff like that. I think that's nice. But yeah, it's not my absolute favorite of that. But I do love this title sequence so much. You know, this was a really exciting moment for me as a fan of Doctor Who when I became like a really big obsessive Doctor Who fan in Series 5. So, you know, I have a soft spot for it. So maybe I'm biased and I'm sorry. But that's life, baby. This is my tier list, my rules. Get over it. On this tier list that I'm using, they're not talking about the Series 7A ones where, you know, they changed the colors with Instagram filters. I just want to say anyone who approved that should be put on trial. I think I need a proper apology for putting that ugly, ugly thing on my screen. The ugly logo changes with the awful Photoshop textures. Electric chair. Next up is the 2012 title sequence, and I put it in the not for me category. Now, if the Series 7A title sequences was a crime against humanity, this is straight to the electric chair. This title sequence is so offensive to my eyes. The theme music, awful. The visuals, horrific. It's just a bunch of stock imagery that they just compiled together. That little wolf drinking tea. The theme music literally sounds like it's in pain. It is crying out for help. It is asking to be put down. That wolf is howling, baby. It is dying. It is a precursor of Bad Wolf taking over the show again. That's what it's doing. It was warning us. It was an omen saying, time is running out. Did we listen? No, we did not listen, and that is our fault. This Series 7B title sequence was an omen, and we should have listened. We should have listened, but we didn't. Shame on us. And shame on you. I think the logo is awful. I think the font is awful. I think incorporating Matt Smith into that awful little Cosmo thing, awful. And when you think, oh, thank God it's almost over. Thank God the title sequence is almost done. The TARDIS flies towards the camera. And you know what the doors do? They open the wrong way. How dare you? How dare you put this on my screen? How dare you? Stephen Moffat, I want an apology. Just kidding, I love you, Stephen Moffat. But this, someone needs to answer for this. Someone needs to be punished. How dare you, you beast? Next up is the 2014 title sequence, and I put it in the okay category. This one's okay. Yeah, she's okay. I like the cogs at the beginning. I like the first half of the new theme, but as soon as the wee woos come in, it's just a bit, oh, it hurts. It feels like someone's drilling into my ears. It's quite painful. And for some reason, the title sequence was always out of sync with the music. Like every single time, it was so weird. It was really odd. I just don't get why they couldn't ever sync it correctly. And when the visuals don't match the music and the sound effects, it's really hard to watch because it doesn't make any sense. You need those visual cues, you know. They designed it to match with the music. I don't know, I think it was a bit insulting to the person who created the title sequence to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not giving them the tools to succeed, dude. Help them out. I like having just the eyes of Peter Capaldi. I think that's a nice touch instead of having the full face. And I like the final part of the sequence with all the blue and the swirly circles and stuff like that. I think that looks really nice. So, you know, there's parts of this title sequence that I think is okay, but I'm not really a big fan of it. Next up is the 2018 title sequence, and I put it into the best category. I adore this title sequence for Jodie Whittaker. I think it's one of the best things to come out of this era. I think the theme music is beautiful. It feels like a modern interpretation of the original, just adding so much bass. And it's creepy and it's spooky and it's experimental. And you know, the visuals harken back to the original as well. You know, the swirly howl-around effect is given like a beautiful fluid and CGI interpretation of that. It is just so stunning. And as Jodie's era goes on, they add a bit more color to it as well, and it just feels even better. You know, I just really, really love this title sequence. I love this logo that they've used for her era as well. I just think it looks really slick and very modern in a good way. And I think if I was showrunner of Doctor Who, this is what my brief for the title sequence would have been. I'd be like, do a modern day version of the original. I want it to feel like the original, just given a modern day budget. And that's what this is. And it's just excellent. I also love the choice of using the color purple and adding like the darker elements with the purple is just really good as well. It's just so nice. It felt so different to every other title sequence we've had in the new series. It's the only one that moved away from being bombastic and moved to being more spooky. And I really applaud Chris Chibnall for doing something different. And I think in this instance, it really paid off. I think the only part of it I don't really like is the episode credits at the end. It feels like an afterthought. But apart from that, I really like it. Next up is the 2023 title sequence for David Tennant's 3 episodes, and I put it into the good category. I think this title sequence makes so much sense for Russell T Davies too. You know, it's a return to the super exciting, energetic adventure title sequence that, you know, the original had for Russell's first era. It does feel a bit unfinished at this point, and you know, we see a more polished version, if you want to say that, for Ncuti Gatwa's first series. I think this is one of the things about this era, is that I think objectively, because of the budget, it looks good. It looks fine. You know, it's given enough money in order to, you know, they successfully pulled off what the brief is. And I think it is well executed. Like, it's well made. But do I love it? Not really. I do like that they tried to do something different, you know, instead of having like one consistent journey, you know, they've done heaps of different cuts and stuff like that. You know, you've got the close-up of the TARDIS like skirting along the vortex. And, you know, yeah. Once again, you know, we're starting off in one vortex and then going into another. You know, it harkens back to that original one. It's just a new version of it. What I don't like is the logo. I don't mind them bringing back that 1970s logo again. I think they've done a good job at recreating it. It's just in the title sequence, it feels so flat. It's so PNG. It's just like still. You know, even in the 1970s, they put a gradient on it. You know, like nothing happens to this. It just appears and then it goes. It just feels like an afterthought. And yeah, I'm just not loving it. Next up is the 2024 title sequence for Ncuti Gatwa, and I put it into the good category. This one is pretty much the same as the original, but they've just updated it a little bit, added a few different little effects in the middle there, and I think it's totally fine. I think I prefer it to the last one. It's definitely a title sequence that aired on Disney+. I don't mind it. I don't mind the theme song. I don't mind the visuals. It's totally, totally okay. I don't think I'm ever going to be emotionally ready to talk about this era of Doctor Who without being annoyed. But the day it comes, maybe I'll make videos about it. Maybe I'll talk about it all the time. But I think I'm still like really like in shock over how that last episode ended and how dead the show feels. But you know, that could change. Can't wait. Anyway, this got silly. Anyway, so that's my list. I'm pretty happy with how this looks. This is what's in my brain. this feels accurate. You know, the 1960s, 70s, you know, the 90s one, Matt Smith, Jodie Whittaker's one, you know, they're my favorites. There's something, you know, the 70s ones are really iconic. You know, the original one, the Jodie Whittaker's one, are just so spooky. And, you know, the 96 one and the 2010s one just feels so expensive. And I just really love them. And the less we say about the 2012 title sequence, the better. Okay? But yeah, let me know in the comment section how wrong I am. I'm sure, I know there are 2012 defenders out there. I've seen you. And I'm sorry, but you're wrong. You're wrong now. I'm going to be that person in the comment section now. Actually, you're wrong. How dare you? Just kidding. You're free to enjoy whatever you like. If you love it, that's great, and I'm happy for you. That's the biggest takeaway from any of these videos. If you enjoyed something I didn't, that's great. That's a good thing. It means you got to have fun out of something that I couldn't get fun out of. That's always a good thing. Anyway, hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time in whatever video I decide to make. Oh, yeah, we did it though. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Nez YouTube channel.